What's going on, people on the other side of the screen? This is your boy Alex, and today we have a very exciting episode that I'm really excited to share with you guys in just a minute. Later on in this video, I will go over my trade recaps from this week, but before we do that, I did want to share a little bit about what has helped me become more profitable and keep more of my money from trading. Krispy Kreme, guys. I know it's old school, but man, they are good. Alright guys, now before we get into all that, I need to whip out my cup of joe. Oh! On this episode, I did want to go over something that's super important, talked about all the time, but very rarely done, and that is cutting losses. I would have to say I'm probably the worst person at cutting losses, and I'll show you guys why. And this is something that I've always kind of known, but I haven't really been able to take it to heart and really understand the importance of it and really be able to put it into practice. And as you guys will see, all my losses previously have been enormous, much larger than my wins, and that is because I do not know how to cut losses. The way I've kind of seen it is if you are a profitable trader and if you're winning 70, 80, 85% of the time, then you should be okay. And if you have trouble cutting losses, you'll be fine because you are stacking more and more singles on top of each other and building up your account. However, what I didn't really realize is that even though you can stack up singles and you can have a really good win percentage like mine, which is about 75-80%, it doesn't really matter if in 1 week or in 2 weeks of all your work that you have done and to build up your account, you lose all in one trade, right? Even though you lose 5% of the time, that 5% can really destroy you and take away all your profits for the month or for the week, or whatever. So there's been a couple of traders that I really enjoy following on YouTube and on social media, and that's Kyle Williams. If you look him up, I think it's Trader Kyle or something like that, and Jack Kellogg. I forget what he is in chat, and I remember him from the challenge chat room from Tim Sykes. That's where I kind of started my journey and my career. Anyway, so Kyle always talks about that you do need to have a good win percentage. However, that's not the most important thing. As long as your losers are always less than your winners, then you should be okay. And even though I kind of did understand that idea and I did know that you have to have your winners, but I didn't see it as necessary to growing until recently, where I just kind of started evaluating like, why am I still kind of growing so slowly? Like, I am improving as a trader, I am getting better, I'm taking better trades, I have better trade plans, I'm winning from when I started like 10-15% of the time, which was absolutely terrible, and I did that for like 6 months at least, then I improved to like 30%, and I'm at a point where I'm winning 75-85% of the time. However, sometimes I still have red months, and sometimes my green months aren't that big, and I'm just like, I'm really sick of this. I really need to start growing my account a little more aggressively, and not by taking more shares or by taking on more risk during a trade, but it has to be something different. Like, it has to be something that I'm doing wrong. And so one of his a little more recent videos, it is like I think a month or two old, but he goes over this fact and he goes over his stats, and I just really saw that he has more losers than I do typically per week. However, he makes a lot more off his trades that he does win because his losers were, I think, like half the size of his winners. I think then is kind of when I started thinking a little bit more about it, and I looked into my own stats, which I'll show you guys a little bit right here. And it was just that fact that I really want to get better at trading, and I always just told myself that, hey, the trades I'm taking kind of require a little bit more risk, and that's fine, as long as I'm winning a lot as opposed to losing. And so kind of by letting myself believe the fact that I can have all I need is a good win percentage, and I don't really care about, that 1 or 2 losers that I do have, even though they are big, has really been huge hindrance to my performance. And it got to a point where as I started growing my account little by little, those winners got a little bit bigger and those losers got way bigger. And I had a couple losses that were over $1,000 and my average win was only like $200. So obviously there's something there that just doesn't add up. And I started going over a lot of my trades that I have done that I have lost a lot. And I realized that, you know, I do have a solid trade plan. I just don't stick to it. I do take trades that have very high odds of winning, and I'm fairly picky about the trades that I do take. However, the risk or my stop loss was usually really wide, and so what would happen is when my stop loss or risk got hit, I wasn't comfortable taking that big of a loss, and what would end up happening is I would just hope and be like, okay, this has to come down. And what happened in a lot of cases, it would keep going and going, and then at that point I'm sweating, I'm have anxiety and stress, and I'm like, I can't take this huge loss. And it just kind of snowballed where I'm like, it needs to come down, it needs to come down. Like, I can't take this huge trade. This is going to be enormous for me. And at the end, where I just can't take it anymore, I end up taking a much larger loss than what was intended by my trade plan. So I did want to show you guys a little bit into my stats, but if we go back into last month, the month before, we can see that I have $1,300 loss in November, a $400 loss, a $600 loss, $400 loss. And again, my average win is a lot smaller than that. It's like $200-300. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And so what I've started doing recently is I have a good trade plan, but when I get into a trade, I'm not thinking about the profit that I could possibly make, 300, 400, 500 bucks on this trade. Now what I'm thinking is like, hey, I need to get out as soon as this started going the wrong way. I need to have my finger on that cover button, because even if I try to get out of my stop loss, there's a possibility of slippage. There's a possibility of just getting squeezed another 10%, and then I'm down a huge loss again. That has really been improving my performance this month. If we look into, I guess, the last couple of weeks, I did that very well. I had a $68 loss, a $35 loss, and my average win was probably like $200. And so because of that, I was able to grow my account much more per week than I have before. This week, which has been my best week to date. So if we look here, my previous best week was $663, which was back in January. This week, February 3rd through the 7th, I was able to come out with a new record of $736. Monday, $186 loss. Tuesday, $234. Wednesday, $254. Thursday, set a new daily record of $426. On Friday, trade just didn't go and I cut it short before I was able to get into a loss at $8. So on Monday, I did have a loss on VXRT for $186. I was also on pre-market with a live watch list from one of the YouTubers and traders that I know. He was getting in short, and he said that, you know, hey, this isn't going to go anywhere. So I was thinking that I think he's a better trader than me, and I think that, you know, this will actually go the way he says it's going to go. And so I ended up getting in quite a bit early here, pre-market, and what ended up happening is it squeezed really hard at the open. So I added in. And again, none of this was really to my trade plan because I had no trade plan. I was following somebody else. This ended up dropping. I was like, okay, fine, yeah, it's done. And then it ended up just bouncing, consolidating, and squeezing back up. I usually don't like taking trades that is somebody else's idea, and I'm usually good at not doing that. However, just was an impulsive trade Monday morning over the weekend, and it ended up losing $186. So what? My entry was at $1.45 average, and my exit was $1.62, so I ended up losing 11%. Now, it's not a terrible loss. It is more than I expected, but I'm just glad it's not like a 20% loss like I used to have. Now, on Tuesday, I traded VXRT again. This time around, I did make $234 on it. That was the following day. Basically, I saw that the previous day, if we look here, previous day it had closed very weak. You can see this candle, it opened here, spiked huge, but then came basically all the way back down. So I was thinking of trying to play it for the first red day, and this time it did work. I ended up getting pre-market on the bounce, added into bounce on the morning panic, and I took my first cover into the second crack here, down to the mid 120s, and then having a really strong bounce, which kind of scared me. I thought this might consolidate, grind back up, however it came back down, and for really the longest time ever here, it ended up consolidating and not cracking. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take my profits. I'm not going to be greedy on this, because if it does come back up and start grinding, then I'm going to give back profits. So I ended up covering too soon, unfortunately, because it had one crack and then another fade back down all the way below $1, which would have been a huge win for me if I had been a little more patient. But again, because of the previous day performance where it did bounce, consolidate, and start grinding back up, I thought that it could do that again, so I ended up cutting it short. However, a 7% win and $234 makes up for the losses on Monday, so that was okay. Wednesday, $254 win, a little bit higher than on Tuesday, and on the Wednesday I played PBYI. It had really a big spike from $8 to $15, so it basically doubled. And this was honestly more of an impulsive, emotional trade. I probably wouldn't have taken this otherwise, but there's just a lot of stuff kind of running this week, and I was a little bit overwhelmed and wasn't really focused. However, I did see kind of resistance into the $15 range back on the yearly chart. I saw that it was kind of grinding and spiking in the morning, and then it just on one candle it completely squeezed from 14 to 15 bucks. I was like, okay, this is overextension. I've seen this before, and it's really struggling here at 15, and it cannot break 15. And I'm taking half size. I ended up having a great trade on it because it pulled all the way back below $13. I ended up capitalizing 8% on it, so my entry was at 14.5. My exit was at 13.2. However, again, this probably is not something I would do again, or at least not with a lot of size, just because this is trying to short into a parabolic move, which is very dangerous, and not something I would recommend to people, at least people that are starting out or that are newer to trading. Thursday, biggest win ever, $426 on VVUS. Now with this trade, I'm actually, even though it was my biggest trade, I was a little bit disappointed because I was actually shooting for about a $700 win. With the size I was taking, I wanted to capture more of the move. If we look here, Vivas had basically doubled from $2 to $4 in just a couple of days. And what I saw here on this day, a morning panic and recovered, so we call this a weak open, a red to green move. I ended up shorting into this second leg of this push, and it ended up kind of consolidating and squeezing one last time, so I ended up taking my other half. So I ended up being in full position, which was about $7,000 or so. This ended up working very well. It topped out and it ended up fading and kind of cracking, so I covered here into this little crack here, and then I covered a little bit more into here. Again, if I was a little more patient, or if I held overnight, you know, I could have made more because it did come back down even more. However, this moved a little more slowly and didn't have, I guess, as much meat on the bone as I thought it would. And the daily volume was fairly little on this day, so it only traded about 3.5 million. But my entry was 3.4, and I covered at 317, so for almost a 7% win. Honestly, a good trade. However, it just didn't give me what I wanted. But you know, you can't complain when you just have your biggest day, and it's amazing. Like, it's just such a blessing to keep adding those profits and see progression. So, you know, even though I didn't get what I wanted out of this particular trade, I did end up having a great day. On Friday, I had an $8 win, which is kind of small, but you know, it's a lot better than a loss. And having such a great week already, I didn't expect too much. I was using my small account. I was really only gonna shoot for like $100 anyway, but my goal was do not lose money today. Cover for break even if you have to. Doesn't matter what the trade does, but don't lose any money because we want to have a record week this week. If we're looking at the trade, it was on PBYI, something I traded on Wednesday. Oh, basically, so if we look here at the daily, I was thinking that today could be the day that it finally ends up cracking $13 and kind of going back down to maybe like, I don't know, $11 or $10 or something like that. but I just didn't really have the volume to do that. If you look at the daily here, and ended up having a weird open where it quickly dropped to 13 bucks and then recovered. So I ended up getting here in on this bounce, which is super early, but I was like, hey, it's gonna probably end up going back down, cracking 13. So, but that did not happen. I ended up pushing. I shorted into this push. As you can see, it kept going all the way to 14 bucks. However, my original trade plan was a stop loss or risk at $14. I was kind of like in a position where I felt like the trade would still work using this $14 resistance. However, I just got in super early and wasn't patient enough. So instead of cutting my loss, I ended up thinking like, hey, I'm gonna let this play out and see what happens, because I do still think that this is gonna work. And that's exactly what happened. It ended up going to 14.04 and then coming back down below 13 bucks. So this is kind of the really tricky part of trading, where it's not an exact science. Your support and resistance levels are not gonna be perfect. Like if you set a $13 resistance or support level, like that stock can go like 5-10 cents above that and just be a fake out, and it would have worked. But if you cut it, you literally just cut the top or the bottom and your trade plan would have worked. So what I kind of found out and started doing is giving it like a couple seconds, maybe like up to a minute, to kind of see what it does. Like, so here at 14, I was like, oh crap, this is breaking 14, and I broke 14. I'm like, okay, trade plan's out. But then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this just a little bit of time to kind of see what it does. And then literally what I saw in like 30 seconds to a minute is this just completely rejected. It had a big candle and flushed all the way down to below, I think it was like 13.70 from 14 bucks. And so like, okay, let's wait it out a little bit, see what happens before I cover into this pullback. And that's exactly what happened. It rejected this level that I had originally set, and then just came all the way back down. And then I actually ended up covering here because it did bounce, set a higher low, and then made a higher high and kind of started grinding back up. So I'm like, I'm not taking a loss today. I'm just gonna cover. And so I covered here, basically break even, just made just slightly a little bit of money. The only thing that I probably could have done better was be a little more patient here are my entries, and if I would have been able to do that, then I probably wouldn't have covered here, because I still would have been in the green quite a bit. But you know, that's trading. You're never going to be perfect. You try as hard as you can to be perfect, and when you're wrong, get out as soon as you possibly can. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching all the way through this video, because I know you guys did, because this is super entertaining. Either way, thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode. Hopefully it was interesting. You guys liked it, learned something, gonna use it to apply in your next trade, and I will see you guys next episode. Peace.